Yeah, before we open this up for questions, let me share some of the principal impressions that came out of our travel to Afghanistan and Iraq. First and foremost, we were extremely impressed by the extraordinary dedication and devotion and skill of our men and women in uniform. What they are doing is very tough work, but our troops are performing brilliantly under difficult circumstances, and they are doing so with extraordinarily high morale. Everywhere we went, people are very proud of the work that they do. And I think it's important for those of us back home to remember that this volunteer fighting force is incredibly proud of their work and are doing it with great dedication. The same, by the way, holds true for the diplomats and the civilians who we met. In many ways, their work is just as difficult and just as important. And all of us back home have reason to be proud, and we support their heroic service. We went to Afghanistan first because it is the central front in the war against terrorism. That is where the 9/11 attacks were planned. And today in Afghanistan and the border region of Pakistan, Al-Qaeda and the Taliban are mounting a growing offensive against the security of the Afghan people and increasingly the Pakistani people, while plotting new attacks against the United States. The situation in Afghanistan is perilous and urgent. We must act now to reverse a deteriorating situation. I called over a year ago for additional U.S. troops to be placed in Afghanistan, as well as more non-military assistance and more support from our NATO allies. And I'm glad that there's a growing consensus back home that we need more resources in Afghanistan. We should not wait any longer to provide them. In our meetings with President Karzai and the other Afghan leaders, I stressed my strong commitment to Afghanistan's security and economic development and urged them to work on a more-for-more basis, more U.S. and NATO support for Afghanistan and more action by the Afghan government to take on corruption and counter narcotics, and to improve the rule of law, and to make sure that resources and services are actually delivered for the Afghan people. We also need a policy, as both Jack Reed and Chuck Hagel mentioned, that compels Pakistani action against terrorists who threaten our common security and are using the Fatah and the Northwest territories of Pakistan as a safe haven. And we have to do this at the same time as we deepen our relationship with the Pakistani people and the recently elected democratic government. Together, I believe we have to succeed in taking the fight to the terrorists in order to protect the American people as well as the Afghan people. And to do that, we're going to have to support lasting stability for Afghanistan and Pakistan, as well as economic opportunity for their people. In Iraq, we reviewed the gains that have been made in lowering the levels of violence thanks to the outstanding efforts of our military, the increased capabilities of the Iraq security forces, the Sadr ceasefire, and the decision by Sunni tribes to take the fight to al-Qaeda. We also noted that the political reconciliation and economic development that's necessary for long-term stability in Iraq continues to lag. There is security progress. Now we need a political solution. The message we heard from Iraq's leaders is that they're ready to do more, and they want to take more responsibility for their country. And I believe that the best way to support Iraqi sovereignty and to encourage the Iraqis to stand up is through the responsible redeployment of our combat brigades. I welcome the growing consensus in the United States and Iraq for a timeline. My view, based on the advice of military experts, is that we can redeploy safely in 16 months so that our combat brigades are out of Iraq in 2010. As president, I intend to work with our military commanders to assure that we redeploy out of Iraq carefully with the safety of our troops in mind. And as I've said over the last 2 years, once we redeploy our combat brigades, we're still going to retain a capability to protect our personnel, to target terrorists, and to train Iraqi security forces if there is political progress. And speaking with Afghans and Iraqis, the U.S. military and civilians, all three of us, I think, were struck by both the peril and the promise of this moment. If we responsibly end the war in Iraq, we can strengthen our military, step up our efforts to finish the fight against al-Qaeda and the Taliban in Afghanistan, and succeed in leaving Iraq to a sovereign government that can take responsibility for its own future. In short, we can seize this moment to make America more secure, to focus on broader challenges like defeating terrorism, reversing the spread of nuclear weapons, and achieving true energy security, a challenge that I will discuss, among others, with some of our closest friends and allies in the days ahead. Finally, I'm honored to be here in Jordan, which has been an invaluable ally and partner of the United States for many years, and I want to thank the people of Jordan for their friendship and their hospitality. Jordan's leadership is a source of pride for its own people. I've long admired King Abdullah's example of moderation and modernization. I look forward to discussing opportunities to deepen our cooperation on the full range of security and economic challenges that together we face in the region. And I know that, as always, the King will be a valuable source of insight. Now, before I take some questions, I want to make a comment about the events today in Jerusalem. Today's bulldozer attack is a reminder of what Israelis have courageously lived with on a daily basis for far too long. I strongly condemn this attack and will always support Israel in confronting terrorism and pursuing lasting peace and security. Right now, my thoughts and prayers go out to all who were injured and to their families.